Iowa is a team that we need to be paying attention to entering the 2023 season. Now, I know how some of you are probably reacting to that, whether internally or externally in anger. Bear with me. I understand that the Hawkeyes have been trash for the past 2 seasons offensively. People often forget that defensively and on special teams, the Hawkeyes have been masterclass. There is only one team that over the past 2 seasons has on average fielded a better defense than Iowa, at least when it comes to talent. I don't know about performance or efficiency adjusted for all other parts of the team. That would be Georgia. Now, Georgia has had a great to elite offense the past 2 years as well, which helps them. But talent-wise and seeing what they achieved in 2021, I think Georgia is the only team that has achieved at a higher rate on the defensive side of the ball than Iowa has, which places them at number 2. Still better than nearly 130 other college football teams in the FBS division. And then on special teams, there is only one team that could maybe rival Iowa on average over the past 2 seasons, special teams-wise. That would be Michigan, potentially, with Jake Moody and Brad Robbins at kicker and punter. And even then, just like defensively with Georgia, Iowa might have something to say about that. They have been cream of the crop, top tier, master class in special teams and on the defensive side of the ball. Their problems have solely resided on the offensive side of the ball. If Iowa has an offense that at least scores on average 4 touchdowns a game, they probably get 10 wins. They might even get 11 wins. Heck, this past season, if they had an offense that on average scored 28 points per game, they probably end up in Indy. Whether they lose to Nebraska or not, which was ultimately the nail in the coffin for those hopes, don't know. But they probably would have won some other games. That I am certain of. Offensively, they have been an abject disaster. Blame it mostly on Brian Ferentz. Also Spencer Petras. The offensive line has not done as well in the past 2 seasons as per usual under a Kirk Ferentz team, especially last year. Last year was the worst offense that Iowa has had by Iowa standards in a while. It's pretty bad. They were 123rd in points per game, only scoring 17.7 points per game. And that includes the defensive touchdowns. That isn't offensive-only points. That's just points per game. But there is hope. Not total hope, because Brian Ferentz is still there, and Kirk Ferentz does not want his son to be fired. That is evident by several years of average to below average performance to horrid performance on the offensive side of the ball. But the portal is being used mostly for offensive players. Mostly for offensive players. The transfer portal is being used. Cade McNamara, Erick All, Daijon Parker, Seth Anderson, Rusty Feth, Deacon Hill. Those are 6 incoming transfers. 6 of them on the offensive side of the ball. 6 incoming offensive transfers. I believe so. I'm 99% sure. Seth Anderson again at wide receiver. Wide receiver is a position that I anticipate is going to get worse for Iowa because, look, they lost Arlen Bruce IV to the portal. They also did lose Keegan Johnson to the portal. Both of them going to the Big 12. Bruce is going to Oklahoma State. Keegan Johnson is going to Kansas State. That's where they're going. And you only got one guy coming in from a lower level division to replace him, so I anticipate there will be regression there. But every other position, I anticipate an increase of production and just overall a better at everywhere. Quarterback will improve with Alex Padilla and Spencer Petras no longer being a part of the program. Cade McNamara is a winning quarterback. Helped keep Michigan's season alive from total collapse in 2020. Helped them win the Big Ten title, beat Ohio State, and reach the college football playoff in 2021. Ohio State had beaten Michigan every year for the past decade, and McNamara helped break that streak. Erick All was also a part of that same Michigan team. Daijon Parker comes from Saginaw Valley State, but he's highly ranked in the transfer portal. Same thing with Rusty Feth, except he comes from Division I FBS Miami of Ohio. And yeah, that's, looking at the incoming transfers and also looking at the running back room, Caleb Johnson returns, and the offensive line, Logan Jones, I think, is a solid center, will be one of the best in the Big Ten. The tackle room, where Daijon Parker is projected to start at right tackle, Mason Richmond at left tackle. The tackles should dramatically improve, and Connor Colby and Jennings Dunker, both starting guards or guards with significant playing time this past season, they also return. So an offensive line that had a lot of youth last year, didn't have a ton of leadership, they return. The tight end room is getting bolstered. I know Sam Laporta, a great tight end, is leaving, but Luke Lachey, big-bodied, long tight end, and as long as Erick All is healthy, after Brock Bowers, those could be 2 and 3 in any order for best tight ends in the nation. They certainly have that potential. That's certainly also a bold take if I predict that to officially happen. Not saying that's my prediction. I'm just saying they have the potential for that to happen. And then defensively, 6 starters depart. Lucas Van Ness, John Wagoner, Seth Benson, Jack Campbell, Kayvon Merriweather, and Riley Moss. Linebacker's interesting because Seth Benson and Jack Campbell leave. They ran out of eligibility. Campbell went to the NFL, and Benson right now isn't projected to be drafted anywhere, I don't believe, at least according to ourlads.com. Granted, this was only updated 2 months ago. But I'm going to use it. It's pretty reliable, and I can use the portal to supplant where Our Lads isn't fully updated. But also Justin Jacobs, he's gone, transferring to Iowa. So linebacker could be an area where you could see some pretty significant regression. I don't think that'll happen, but I do think defensive line and defensive back will be better position groups than linebacker. I look at Joe Evans and Deontay Craig at the defensive end positions. I look at those guys, and that's phenomenal. Phenomenal edge rushers, and then phenomenal tackles as well in Noah Shannon and Logan Lee. So the defensive line will be great. I think secondary will be great and one of the nation's best once again. Losing Riley Moss and Kayvon Merriweather means some other programs certainly have better depth and higher ceilings, but Cooper DeJean is back. Xavier Nwankpa, who is one of the best defensive back recruits of the 2022 class, he's going to be a sophomore. He got significant playing time this past season. He's going to step into the strong safety role. Quinn Schulte, he's returning. He started at free safety. And Sebastian Castro, who started at cash, he is going to be back as well. A lot of redshirt seniors are projected to be starting on this defense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8 of the projected starters are seniors or redshirt seniors, so a lot of experience. There's not going to be many green mistakes made on this defense. They're deep. They're well-disciplined. And going back to the part where I said they're deep, they're not as deep as Michigan, Ohio State, or these teams that recruit better. But because of development and my trust in Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator, I think it's safe to say that they are a deep and disciplined, elite caliber defense. On the offensive side of the ball, you do have a lot more veterancy than you do last year because the amount of returning starters, but they're mostly made up of juniors. They're juniors, seniors, then a few sophomores. You got 4 sophomores projected to start. You got 1, 2, 3, I think you got four seniors, and then you have 3 juniors projected to start, 3 or 4. And Iowa uses the fullback position. Our Lads lists this, and they have guys factored in for different lineups. So I do believe, there are 12 guys listed for starting on offense because of different formations. Their offensive scheme is a pro style /multiple. And look, Their offense isn't modern, but Cade McNamara was a top 25 QB in QBR in 2021. Erick All was one of the Big Ten's better tight ends. The Iowa offensive line, I don't know if you could say last year was a fluke because the 2021 O-line wasn't great either. But with the amount of returning starters, I'm pretty optimistic about this offensive line. And finally, you have Caleb Johnson at running back. 779 rushing yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 6 rushing touchdowns. He had a total of 800 yards from scrimmage. Total of 800 yards. And he was the only player who had multiple carries, who had more than 10 rushing attempts, who averaged over 4 yards per carry on an Iowa offensive line that, again, was pretty stinking bad, both at run block and at pass block. Again, the offense was 123rd in the nation in scoring. But setting all of that aside, but also in the background, because it's important to look at how good of a team is and analyze a team before making a prediction on its schedule, let's talk about Iowa football's schedule. Their non-conference slate, they start out hosting Utah State September 2nd. They travel to Iowa State September 9th in the annual Cy-Hawk game, and they host Western Michigan September 16th. Last year's loss to Iowa State was pretty weird, considering that Iowa State finished out to be 4-8 and were much worse than Iowa was. Iowa in that game made plenty of mistakes. They blocked 2 punts that were of the Cyclones, and they still lost. It's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible sight to see. That last year, they also got 7 points from a field goal and 2 safeties. So that was also an incredible sight to see for Iowa as well. They were a disaster in the first half of the year, turned it around in the second half. It was the inverse for Iowa State. They started out 3-0, and they finished 1-8. I think Iowa, I'm pretty confident they will win all 3 of those games. They're definitely not losing to Utah or Western Michigan. On the road at Iowa State, though, who returns a decent amount of production, that could be a challenge. From the East Division of the Big Ten, which after 2023, divisions will be no more. The Hawkeyes play Penn State on the road, and then they host Michigan State and Rutgers from the East. Penn State will no doubt be the Hawkeyes' toughest game. It'll be in Beaver Stadium. Because the Michigan game, which would be Penn State's biggest home game, is in November, the whiteout will probably be against Iowa, I think, because they'll be allowed to have a night game against Iowa. The Big Ten, again, has this weird rule. It's a rule that I hate, but they have a rule against night games in November. By night games, I mean the ones that start, at 8 p.m., and that means that they won't have an 8 p.m. start time against Michigan, most likely, though I hope that could somehow change, even though it would play a disadvantage to my Wolverines. I like to see great matchups. Night games are amazing, same with the whiteout crowd. I imagine, though, given that Iowa will enter that game 3-0, and given the fact that Penn State should also enter that game 3-0, I think that would be a game where both of the teams perhaps are ranked in the top 25, and I do definitely anticipate that will be, if the Michigan game isn't, and I think that's unlikely given the fact that the Michigan game for Penn State's in November, I think that very well could be a whiteout game. Plus, Penn State is the only team outside of maybe Wisconsin who will be a top 10 team that Iowa will face. The only team will be Penn State. Wisconsin themselves, I'm more inclined to say they will be a top 15 team. They definitely have top 10 potential. That I know for sure, but Penn State is even better. I have Penn State ranked at 5th currently in my top 25. Wisconsin I have at 15. I have Wisconsin at 15 currently. And I will be making a new post-spring top 25 after all or most of the spring games have concluded, and I do even more research. So if you want to get notified when I release my post-spring top 25, like this video, hit the notification bell, and please subscribe if you have not already. but most importantly, hit the notification bell. So, look, Penn State is going to be the toughest game. It's on the road, and you also got to look at Wisconsin on the road too. But outside of that, let me list Iowa's schedule outside of Penn State and Wisconsin, which are both on the road. Hosting Utah State, traveling to Iowa State, hosting Western Michigan, then there's the Penn State game on the road, hosting Michigan State, hosting Purdue, traveling to Wisconsin, hosting Minnesota, playing Northwestern in a neutral site game, hosting Rutgers, hosting Illinois, traveling to Nebraska. Outside of Wisconsin or Penn State, you cannot name a team. You cannot name a team who will be great that Iowa will face, or who even will be good for sure. Maybe Michigan State has that potential. Maybe Nebraska or Illinois have the potential to be good. But great, the only teams that I see that have the potential to be great, like a sizable potential to be great, are Wisconsin and Penn State. The only team that I think it will be definitively near elite will be Penn State. So Iowa has a wide open opportunity to stack up wins and a wide open opportunity to win the Big Ten West. Now, obviously, Wisconsin with Luke Fickell and what they're bringing in and the fact that game's on the road, and Wisconsin's going to want to take out revenge, that is going to be a tough game to win. Same with the game at Penn State in Beaver Stadium. But Iowa, they faced Michigan and Ohio State last year, which sucked for them. They don't have that this year. And as much as I like Penn State for 2023, I'll give you a hint, I like them more for 2024. And that leads me to the point of saying I don't even think they're on the caliber of Michigan or Ohio State yet. I just don't. I don't. I could totally see Iowa traveling to Beaver Stadium, and for some chaotic reason, which only God would know, they could somehow beat Penn State in Beaver Stadium. I couldn't see that happening if they traveled to Ann Arbor or Columbus. Couldn't do it. So Iowa's schedule plays very well to their advantage. And with the transfers on offense, with the defense returning a lot of starters, the special teams returning everyone, I could see Iowa going 10-2, maybe even 11-1, despite the fact that I don't think this team is capable of even competing in the college football playoff, let alone competing in the Big Ten championship game when they likely face Michigan or Ohio State. Or let's say they beat Penn State in the regular season and Penn State wins every other game. You're not going to beat Penn State twice if you manage to beat them once. And the amount of universes where Iowa beats Penn State on the road pales in comparison to the amount of universes where Penn State beats Iowa at home by 3 touchdowns and just blows them off the floor, just wipes them. So, look, this team is a team that needs to be paid attention to, not because they could be in the college football playoff or because they could win the college football playoff or even the Big Ten, but because it's college football. It's entertaining, and we like storylines, and Iowa could be a team that, with enough things falling into place and with luck on their side, could find themselves in positions that I have just said I really don't think they'll be in. But because of their easy schedule, because of the teams they face and some of the matchups they have, because of the portal, because Kirk Ferentz has went undefeated before with this style of football in 2015, and in 2021, they only lost to Purdue, a game that they were in, and they lost to Wisconsin. They won 10 other games and looked solid at points in that year, including beating a Penn State team who at the time was in the top 4, and Iowa was top 3. Iowa can overachieve. It's unbelievable. So, look, that's what I'm trying to get across, is don't discount Iowa. I thought that last year they were going to go 7-5, I think was my prediction for them. And the 2 games that I didn't get right, I think were the Nebraska game at the end of the year, which I thought they would win, and they lost, and the Iowa State game. And I think thinking about it, the Illinois game. Like, there were 2 games which I thought Iowa would win and they lost, and then 2 games that I thought Iowa would lose, and they won. So there were a few games that got switched up, but I had them losing to Ohio State and Michigan, and it happened. And they lost to a few other teams too. So I was right on them last year, but they've made changes. They've made adjustments. Not everywhere, not to be a great team, but they've made enough adjustments to be a good team or a team that can put up a facade of being great with the schedule they have. Like, if Kirk Ferentz could go 12-0 in 2015 with this schedule, and if he went 10-2 in 2021, he can go 10-2, 11-1 with this schedule, with this team, even with the offensive ineptitude. So watch for Iowa. I think they're going to be a pretty entertaining and frustrating team to watch. Speaking of the offensive ineptitude, I do think this team in total points per game will be around 4 touchdowns. I think their points per game will improve by 10 points or more, mainly because of the transfer portal, but also because they don't face as many good teams. Their strength of schedule will be dramatically easier. That'll allow them to, score more points because they're facing more inferior competition. So that's all I have to say in this video. I also do think that Iowa will have the #1 scoring offense in the country as well. Thank you guys for watching. If you're listening to Spotify, please follow the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment your record prediction for Iowa football down below. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.